welcoming us in. And now again, we call Elliot to the Torah as a bar mitzvah.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our keynote speaker, former presidential candidate, Andrew Yang.
Hey everyone, it's great to be here with you today. I think you know my moderator, my colleague at Forward, Carrie Healy, who's been here throughout the day.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Andrew, for coming. I've seen you twice today. This is our second time being able to speak together today. Andrew and I get to work together on a daily basis on the party which he founded, the Forward Party. But this conference today has been talking a lot about allies who share values with the Jewish community, who actually share problems and concerns with the Jewish community. And one of the things I've always found interesting to talk to you about, Andrew, is your work that started way before this past year on trying to connect the Asian community and the Jewish community in new ways. Could you tell everyone a little bit about the gathering that you had last year?
I co-hosted an Asian-Jewish dialogue dinner with a woman named Noah Tishby. How many of you know Noah? And we did it last May as a joint celebration of both Asian and Jewish American History Month. Those seemed like simpler and more innocent times, even though that was less than a year ago. And there's so much anguish in the Jewish community around the world as a result of the attacks of October. But Noah and I came together even then because we thought that we needed to make common cause. I speak to Asian American groups very often, and what I tell them is that we're right behind the Jews on the wheel of hate. And I mean, to kind of make light of it a little bit, but you all know what I'm talking about, where the hatred that drives anti-Semitism is not going to stop the Jewish community, and that's obvious. Like, it's just going to keep on metastasizing into something that ends up overwhelming other communities in different ways. And I talk to my Asian friends and say, look guys, like, you know where the wheel turns, and then we have to be hand in hand, side by side with any community that's facing hate. But the Jewish community, I will say, there's a lot of shared experience. And another truth is that we tend to marry each other. I don't know if you've noticed that. No, so I think there's something there. I went to Brown University in the 90s, and the school was perhaps 30% Jewish, so it was something that I kind of took for granted. Also went to Phillips Exeter Academy. I don't know what the proportion is there. But one of the things that hit me like a truck the other day was that the Jewish student representation at a place like Harvard, I guess at this point Harvard is like a very fraught, but it's gone down from 20 to 30% during my day to something like 7% today, and that just shocked me because I couldn't imagine that things have changed that much in terms of the nature of students and like what I thought was the purported mission of these institutions. And that's something that's also near and dear to many of my Asian American friends and colleagues, which is that they also have this sense that the narratives that are driving various educational institutions do not exactly prioritize folks who are immigrating to this country and looking for a better life unless they happen to be from certain communities that frankly do not resemble the Asian American community in most cases.
So what do you think it is about model minorities or model immigrants that incite the kind of hatred and antipathy that we're seeing both in the Asian community and against the Jewish community today?
I think many of us are old enough to remember a similar time in America where there was a sense that prosperity was growing, and that if you had children, you'd feel better about their future, maybe than you even felt about your own life and career. And that is not the case in a lot of the country now, where you go out there and people are insecure, somewhat desperate, and in that environment, hate flourishes. It's one reason why I'm so grateful to folks like Arnaud and Miriam who are trying to lead people out of hate. And I think that two issues that I have is like, number one, I wish there were more non-Jewish people here today for this sort of event, and certainly I'm proud to be representing the Asian American community here. But folks who are actively leading people out of hatred, should be getting all the resources that we can furnish, because those people that are leading out of hatred, they're saving their lives, but they're also potentially saving our lives, really, because we know that sometimes that kind of radicalization can veer into violence and tragedy.
So when you look at politics today, we often talk a lot about the polarization in politics. And earlier today, we had this really unusual situation where we had a representative from the Republican Party and a representative from the Democratic Party, but they were actually both working for the same thing. They were actually both trying to make sure that Israel was well represented, that anti-Semitism was avoided in public life. And that's not usually the case. How do you see our political parties today using issues in general?
We all can sense how polarized the country has become, where there are only two sides to any issue, and so there's this or that, and so if the other side has some stance, then you naturally feel like you have to take the opposite. And I believe that that's driving hatred and anti-Semitism and tribalism, where people say, okay, who are my enemies? Who am I supposed to blame for my frustration, my lot, my sense of powerlessness? We all know various folks in elected office, and the incentives to do the right thing, unfortunately, are diminishing quickly, and the incentives to do something that gets you social media following and maybe like a good cable news appearance, those incentives are getting stronger and stronger. Some of the best members of Congress have gotten drummed out in this last number of years. And so if you have that kind of system, many of you run businesses, like I ran a business, which by the way, now I joked to my wife, was like my happiest time of my career when I was running a private company, because things were rational, made sense, just trying to do right by folks. But that's not the kind of system of incentives our political leaders now have. It's not like they do the right thing and then they get rewarded. Like at this point, if they do the right thing, in many cases, they'll lose their jobs. They'll have their job security go down. And so in that system, you end up rewarding toxic, noxious, terrible rhetoric and behavior that ends up driving a total lack of solutions and a lack of togetherness, humanization, common cause. And I love the speakers who've been on the stage today, but the enemy is dehumanization. The enemy is dehumanization of Jews, dehumanization of anyone. And if you dehumanize people, then you can do terrible things to them, and it feels somehow moral. And so that is the enemy. That's why that advertisement's so powerful. It's why some of the things that are being discussed. It's all about seeing each other as fellow human beings who have the same hopes and dreams and cares. And what is our political environment doing? It's very much dehumanizing the enemy. It's saying, hey, those people over there are not like you. They are your enemy. We're in a struggle with them. We must defeat them. And it's very, very easy for that then to bleed into treating someone as lesser than you, which then ends up leading into tribalism and hate. So I think the political environment is hand in hand with the outgrowth of anti-Semitism. Obviously, I referenced universities. I think that the culture of universities has also put everything into, again, this binary formula where you're either the oppressed or the oppressor. And unfortunately now in that narrative, Jews have somehow found themselves in the powerful oppressor role, despite the fact that you were a minuscule fraction of the population here in the US and around the world. And when I was growing up, I was taught the opposite, frankly. I was taught that if there was like an oppressed population around the world, it was and is the Jewish community.
So one of the things that may be contributing to the American reluctance to come forward and support Israel in the way that I believe they ought to, and I know you believe they ought to, is this growing sense of isolationism and turning inward. What do you think is driving this sense of genuinely wishing to withdraw from leadership in the world, in America? And it's not just one party or another. We've now had 3 successive presidents who have, been very vocal about the fact that they would like to have America play a more passive role in the world and less engaged.
Fundamentally, it's a tension between a mindset of abundance and a mindset of scarcity. A mindset of scarcity is that, hey, if those people are getting something, it's going to be less for you, and you're going to get less, and you should be upset about the fact that they're getting something. Mindset of abundance is there's enough for you, there's enough for our friends in Israel, there's enough for Ukraine, there's enough for, and by the way, it's not a zero-sum game. Like, we know that's not the way our government functions, that if our friend across the world gets resources, it does not affect what your community is getting, but Americans are being fed the opposite message, is that, look, those people over there are getting something, you are not, you should be angry about it. And that is the climate that is driving, in my opinion, so much of this. It's one reason why I love entrepreneurship, because that's a mindset of abundance, possibility, optimism, enterprise. You have to try and grow every day. That is not the mindset that is pervasive throughout much of the country. I have traveled a lot over the last number of years, and I've been in environments where they are beset by a mindset of scarcity, and then they become susceptible to terrible leadership and noxious ideas that lead them to hate others.
So you've spent a lot of time with the tech community. You are an entrepreneur, and so one of the big questions we've been talking about today is the impact of social media, both just in terms of the virality of some of the hostility that's growing toward people who support Israel, but also this notion of foreign actors intervening in our conversation here in the U.S. People have been talking about whether we should ban TikTok, what's the right approach, what can we do? And so I would ask you, what do you think can be done to protect us from foreign interference in the attitudes of our young people and in our politics?
There are foreign actors using social media to drive hate. And when people ask why are they doing it, it's because it weakens America. They know that if we turn on each other, then we're much less likely to intervene in various environments, and we're seeing that. And so in that environment, it makes perfect sense to be concerned about who's investing resources, reaching so many of our young people. I mean, TikTok is genuinely the primary source of news for Americans underneath a certain age. They are not watching CNN. They're pulling up their TikTok feed and they're getting information. And so if you're being fed information by people who have a totally different agenda than somehow edifying and uplifting you, then you wind up heading down various environments. And I do think that that is driving some of the anti-Semitism we're seeing among young people in particular.
Let's shift and talk about another topic that we spent quite a lively conversation on today, which is our higher ed situation and how anti-Semitism is being handled on campuses. And I'd like to bring it back to this nexus between Asian Americans and Jewish Americans. And most recently at Harvard, there was a lawsuit that overturned affirmative action that was dealing with this question of, was there literally a quota being put on how many Asian students might be able to attend despite their qualifications? How do you expect that ruling will roll out in terms of the number of Asian students that will be invited to participate in higher education, the number of Jewish students now, because there may be, very likely, a certain amount of discrimination that was quietly going on behind the scenes there. But if we start ripping off those quotas, what's going to happen?
We've seen this play out in various public universities that have had a change of policies, and then you've seen, frankly, like shifts in the nature of the students that enroll, and it would probably surprise very few people here what those changes look like. But the thing to avoid, in my view, again, is just a zero-sum game that pits us all against each other. To me, like the challenge I would submit to a place like Harvard is, why are you the same size? You know, like you have an endowment in the tens of billions of dollars. There's obviously a very clear demand for education and your services. Like, why is your student body the same size? the same size? Or why are you opening satellite locations across the world as opposed to in Ohio or Florida or someplace that, you know, that frankly would benefit the country, and you are getting a tax break of, you know, billions of dollars a year that, like, in theory should be serving the American public interest. So those to me are things that could be solutions, really. Like, what we don't want, and I'm going to suggest this is not, it's bad for Asians, it's bad for Jews, is to get into like a contest between various groups for a pie that is being falsely presented to us as static. Like, it is not that there are like X slots and that we have to somehow elbow someone else out of the way. Now, those slots should be allocated according to, in a way that, in my mind, is consistent with the purported mission of the institution, and not some other set of goals that you have somehow overlay over your institution, and like not sure how that precisely happened. But there are ways that we can look at the situation and improve matters in a way that does not end up inflaming us against each other. And so that's something, by the way, on the Asian American side, the frustration a lot of Asian Americans feel is what's happening in charter schools in various parts of the country, including New York City, where if it's test-based, you wind up with a certain proportion of Asian American students, then people look at that and say, hey, that's not what we're going for, that's not acceptable. And then, you know, and then Asian American families are like, why is that there's some number of us that is somehow excessive, given that most of these families are immigrant families, like first generation, that to get into that sort of school and have any kind of opportunity. So that's the frustration the Asian American community feels. And when I talk to the Asian American community, I say something similar where it's like, look guys, like I 100% agree with and feel that frustration. And let's try and solve for it, but solve for it perhaps in a way that doesn't become like an us versus them dynamic.
So you're pretty unusual on the political landscape, in part because you are an Asian American, and there just are not many Asian Americans who sought higher office, certainly not running for president. And
yeah, so an Asian family came to me on the trail and said, thank you, I didn't know we were allowed to run for president. And I said, well, there are only 2 rules to run. Do you all know what the 2 rules are? 35 years and older, natural born U.S. citizen. How many of you qualify? Let's show hands. Why don't you run too? I highly recommend it. So it was something that was unusual in the Asian American community at that time.
yeah, and so why? Well, not just at that time. So you know, we're talking about discrimination. We're talking about hatred against minorities, especially model minorities tonight. And so what do you think holds Asian Americans back from participating in the political system more often? And what do you feel that you can learn from the experience of Jewish Americans who participated in politics, and what's the relationship there between these two communities?
How many of you know Jonathan Greenblatt, the ADL, who's a good friend of mine? I'm going to a bar mitzvah with him in April. So Jonathan is on the board of an organization called the Asian American Foundation, which formed during COVID. And one of the reasons John is there, frankly, is that the Asian American community is trying to learn from you all. And when I talk to the Asian American community, this is what I say, it's very true. It's like, if our economic power is here, our cultural power is here, and then our political power is down here. So we should try and invest some of this and this and this and you know, head in this direction, which I'm going to suggest the Jewish community figured out and did generations ago. So at this Asian Jewish Summit dinner that Noah and I organized, I got it was a fascinating, invigorating evening, and like, it was uplifting, really. But here were the two main takeaways I got. Number one, the Jewish community just wants friends. Just wants people to say, it's like, hey, like, you know, we're in it with you. We care about you. We recognize your humanity. Like, we're your friends. We're friends to your community. And I hope you feel like I want the Asian American community to be a friend of the Jewish American community, and I personally believe myself to be your friend, and I want that to grow. So that was number one, is that the Jewish American community was like, hey, like, we just want friends. And then the Asian American community was like, we have so much to learn from you. That was the dynamic at that dinner. Because the Asian American community is very early days politically. My parents did not talk about politics when I was growing up. It's just get good grades, clean your room, try to get into a good school, like, you know. And when I decided to run, they were not encouraging. Like, I have a feeling that happens in a lot of Asian American households. That Asian Americans are not taught to think that politics is a good idea for us. And by the way, I was the math candidate. Asian Americans are the most underrepresented in electoral politics in America in terms of actually getting elected and holding office. We're something like 6.5% of the population and less than 2% of elected officials. So it is unusual for us culturally, and I think there are a lot of things that go into that. But it's a passion of mine to try and change it, really. And I think one way we can change it is, frankly, by learning from you all.
Well, it's my rule as a former politician that when you have a round of spontaneous applause, as you did earlier in that answer, that it's time to wrap it up and end on a high note. So thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us. And please give a round of applause.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Appreciate you.
On behalf of the synagogue of Michael and Nolan Greenwald, would like to gift you this Book of Esther. Thank you for joining us tonight. May God bless you with strength and courage to continue your important work.
In honor of Beach Synagogue, Nolan and I would like to award the first Palm Beach Synagogue in Greenwald Award for fighting and countering anti-Semitism to Montana Tucker. Montana, you are an inspiration to all, and especially the next generation. And in order for us to confront and counter anti-Semitism, as Terry Castle said, we need more of you. And so you are a spirit of light and action. And so we want you to have this award and let this be a beacon for others to follow in your shoes.
Hello everyone. I don't know if I saw some of you earlier. There's some new faces in here, but I speak at a lot of events, and I have to say this has been, from beginning to end, just so incredible. You guys did such a phenomenal job, and I know everyone in this room feels the same. So thank you all for having me and bringing me here. And to get an award, that was a bonus that I didn't know. So thank you so much. You know, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, or even 2 years ago, that I would be here accepting an award for doing something that I'm just genuinely passionate about and genuinely feel there's no other option, you know? And when all of you guys say, thank you so much for what you're doing, or you're so brave, it's like, for me, this is my only option, and this is something that I'm doing for my grandparents, for my ancestors before my grandparents, for our generation now, and for our future generations. So thank you all so much, and we're all in this together, and Am Yisrael Chai.
Just want to end off with thanking every single one of you who come here tonight and have been here throughout the day. And I really appreciate all the support from the community. And we look forward to being in touch and hopefully making a big difference this coming year. Thank you. Dessert will be served along. Dessert will be served. Ladies and gentlemen, dessert will be served now, so we welcome you all to stay for dessert. Thank you.
Last week we had the Hillel Rabbi. He went to Brown. Common thread.
spoke beautifully. Thank you so much.